Okay, we're live now.
All right, Ben, if you can hear us, we cannot hear you. Okay, there we go. Now we can hear you. All right, it's 6 p.m. and we will call to order this special meeting of the joint discussion between the Town Council and the Planning Commission. It's item 2026-51. The subject of the meeting tonight is a joint Planning Commission and Town Council meeting on Proposition 123 Fast Track and the 2026 Comprehension Plan Amendment, the 2026-2027 Planning and Development Work Plan, and Planning Commission roles and responsibilities. And so I think I'll turn it over to Sarah Nurmela, our Director of Planning and Development, to kind of kick us off.
Great. Thank you, Mayor, council members, and Planning Commission Chair and commissioners. So this has been a long time coming to bring together this joint session, and we do have a full agenda and a couple of hours set aside for this. So I will be presenting, as well as an additional cast of characters from planning that you get to meet. We're mixing it up for you, but we'll all be facilitating each piece of this. So as the mayor mentioned, I am Planning and Development Director. I'm joined here by
Josh Campbell, Senior Strategic Planner.
And I have our relatively new Deputy Director.
Kelly Driscoll, Deputy Director.
And our really new Planning Manager.
Hey, Daryl Womack, Planning Manager.
All right.
And so we wanted to make sure that you were able to get to know folks tonight as well.
We do have two spots at the table. If you guys want to join us up here, I think you should.
Come on down.
Maybe Elliot. Oh, yeah, he's there.
I was really thinking of make it awkward, but.
And then, Sarah, why don't we introduce Elliot, who's the plays the role of attorney for the Planning Commission, if I understand this right.
He is the role, yes.
Yes, Elliot Schaefer, Deputy Town Attorney.
Right, Elliot is relatively new as well, so we have a lot of new energy. As the mayor mentioned, we have 4 items on the agenda, and so I will start off with the conversation around Fast Track and Proposition 123, and then I'll be passing it on to Josh, Daryl, and Kelly will round us up with the Planning Commission roles and responsibilities. So, Fast Track is what originally brought us all together, and as just a little bit of history, we had some policy and code updates that were addressing the idea of Fast Track before it was really defined by the Department of Local Affairs, or DOLA. We'll say DOLA a lot tonight. And they more recently came out with direction. And so we originally were going to bring these two bodies together to talk about what Fast Track process would look like for the town. And I'll be going over for you that it's pretty straightforward and isn't going to require us to do much in terms of code updates. So the intent tonight is to inform you and generally get some feedback from you all. So the current round for Proposition 123, which we did commit to back in 2023, is rounding up. It's finishing up here at the end of the year, and it required us to produce 15 units of affordable housing. We met that, we exceeded that. That has been confirmed with the state. And the only additional thing that we need to do by the end of the year is to establish a fast track process that's consistent with the DOLA guidance that we have. And that would give us the ability to commit to the next cycle, which starts in 2027 and runs through 2029. If we, for some reason, decide not to commit to Prop 123 this year, you'll have another bite at this in a few months, by the way. We will be able to evaluate whether or not we want to do a 2-year cycle, so we can commit again in 2028. So I'll just give you a little bit of backup. So the guidance that we have right now is that if a developer doesn't want to go through the fast track process, they don't need to, but they can choose to. The town must respond if they want to. The definition of a project in order to actually be in this fast track process needs to have 50% or more of its units as being affordable.
Is this interactive or is this, do you want to do your report first?
So typically, let staff finish their presentation, and then it's a good point, Bob. Typically, I like to just free flow conversation unless we're talking over each other, and then I'll jump in and facilitate. But generally, this should be a conversation,
Okay.
just letting them get through the initial presentation first.
Okay.
Let me know if I'm going too fast too. So the essentially fast track, as a reminder, it keeps within a 90-day period for any application or permit that is subject to this fast track definition. And for us, as I mentioned, no code updates are required in order to comply because the fast track review does not apply to all of the application types that we utilize. It only applies to kind of the applications that are essentially done after a site is zoned. So if it has its zoning, then the idea is that it could go quickly through the rest of development review and get to construction more quickly. So site plans, those do, if they're over 20,000 square feet with an affordable project, that's often going to be the case. Those would go to Planning Commission, architectural review, building permit, a variance, and then a special use permit would have to go through both bodies. All of our other kind of zoning related applications, those do not apply to fast track. And that's really why we don't need a code update. To give you a little background on the funding opportunities associated with Prop 123, we have numbers from this last round. About $14.5 million went towards local capacity planning grants, and those were distributed to a ton of communities. It did require a 20% commitment, kind of smaller scale planning efforts. The Affordable Housing Support Fund helped support over 1,100 housing units and then helped keep 81,000 households sort of in their homes. And that was $108 million. And then finally, I think the thing that we're most used to seeing and associating with Prop 123 is assistance towards affordable housing projects. About $97 million went towards 35 different projects. And that can include land banking, debt and gap financing, and below market rate investments. So wide range of possibilities to tap into. And as you all may recall with the latest legislative round, the funding was reduced for Prop 123, but in reality, it's gonna look pretty similar to what this last round included. Because if you recall, the full $300 million was not available for this past 3-year round, and the reduction that was approved by that state, that is pulled over the course of 3 years. So there will be a lot of opportunity for funding. I know that was a key question for a lot of us. So I kept this pretty short. I would like to have some feedback on, thinking about extending ourselves to the next commitment round. One of the things that we are still working on, and this is why we would come back to you, is they have recalibrated how the required number of units is calculated. And while it may work for other communities, it's pretty dramatic for us. Our requirement went from 15 to about 300 with their new calculations. It involves the employment growth rates from the different counties that we sit in and the number of the last 3 years worth of building permit activity. And we have really ranged. We went from 900 plus building permits back in 2024 to what are we at? I forget where we're at. Like right now, hundreds plus something this year. So we have the opportunity with DOLA to offer them a different number. And so that's what we will be doing, working with them on over the next couple of months. And we'd be able to come back to you with a reasonable number that we think we could meet given the possibilities in Erie that we see and our expectations for the rate of growth. It would be significantly less than 300. We, as staff, we don't want to commit the town or our own capacity to anything that we feel is beyond what's really out there. So we'll come back to you with that. We would also come back to you with a resolution, essentially establishing a policy for the fast track. While we don't need to do any code updates, we would want to establish through a policy that we have a fast track process available. The DOLA would need that as evidence for us to be able to commit to this next round. And the second bullet up there is what we have to do next year. So the state is requiring us to have a housing action plan. And so that is something we will be embarking on next year. It is in our proposed budget, but you will see later this year. And that is also going to include an update to our housing needs assessment. Those numbers were pulled in 2022, and we'd like to be able to update those. So that's where we are right now.
All right.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Bob.
Okay, so one quick question. I know the 50% number has been in question. When I went back and forth with DOLA on it for other reasons, they said if a project is 50% or more, it must go through fast track. But if it's less than 50%, it could go through fast track. Has that changed?
We could clarify that with them. I don't know, Josh, if you've ever asked that specifically.
I've not heard that specific question been asked or at least clarified, but what we can do is we routinely meet with them. And I can add that
And
to
I
our
can forward
list.
the old emails if you want.
Appreciate that.
They said there's absolutely no minimum number. It can be a 2-unit housing.
I'm sure that, if a city or municipality chooses to move it through fast track,
Yeah.
but that would be helpful, to know if there's a minimum.
Okay, I will. I'll
yeah.
have my calendar send that to Josh.
Great question, thank you.
How much money did we get in the first round, right, from 2023 to 2026?
We did not have any projects tapped into Prop 123 funds. We actually tapped into a different, I'm trying to remember now the
ARPA?
acronym for it.
ARPA?
We used ARPA funds, the American Rescue Plan Act, but we also used a grant it was a different program through DOLA. And that gave us $1 million towards the Cheeseman project.
Justin thinks we use one.
So if you go back a slide, I think you have the numbers in there from what the state had
Yeah.
given. So of the numbers that are up here, even though we've been participating for 3 years, we haven't gotten anything out of the program as of yet.
Yes.
Okay, and then that leads into my second question, and that is if we commit for another 3 years, what is our commitment? And what was our commitment the first time?
So we were required to do 15 units. It was a much different calculation than this time around. And I know they're trying to find the right way to calculate it. For us, as I mentioned, it's slightly over 300 units. And that is because it's reflective of the Weld County employment growth rate, which is very high, but Erie is pretty low in terms of our employment growth. And it also takes into account our rate of growth. And it has just been, reducing by 50% each year. So we, I think, have a very strong argument to go back to DOLA with actual numbers in relation to Erie's growth and employment growth. We'll be able to come back and give a reasonable number.
All right, and since we didn't get any money from Prop 123, but we produced more than 15 units, what would have happened had we not produced 15 units? Was there some kind of penalty or bill that was going to come to us?
No, there is no penalty other than you can't apply for the next round. So you could take a lot long, and that's what some communities who had a lot higher to reach, like 150, 200, and plus, if they don't reach that commitment, they'll just have to wait.
All right, so our commitment really doesn't commit us to anything other than if we miss our commitment, we would be out for the next year, just 1 year, or the next 3-year cycle?
So if we choose not to commit in November, the one thing it would open us up to is, since we need to do our housing action plan, one of these, the local planning capacity grants, that would be a grant that we could apply for to help reduce what we have to put into the housing action plan. But if we choose not to do it, we can reapply in late 2027 for a 2-year, for 28 and 29.
But
Got it.
the money doesn't go to the municipality. The money goes to the developer.
Yeah, no, I understand that.
Dependent on the application, there are some that are specific for us, though.
Yes, there are smaller, yes.
Yeah.
Like the capacity.
Yeah, so I'm just trying to understand the upside, getting money, and the downside, committing to something we can't meet, and then that precludes us from, trying to engage in the future. What's the estimated cost for the needs assessment, the housing action plan?
We believe it'll be somewhere between $50,000 to $75,000.
Are you working with Dr. Cog on that? I know that, I was just looking for my notes on that. I know they're going through that process of, we just got that update.
Yeah, we did.
Were you in that meeting?
Yeah, it was-
Okay, so are we working with Dr. Cog on the action plan?
Yeah, so we will utilize whatever Dr. Cog can prepare for us. Was it at Dr. Cog where they mentioned maybe $45,000 for housing action plans and for us, we want to be able to update our numbers specific to Erie, so we do anticipate needing to, just add additional scope to our housing action plan. And we certainly want to be able to take advantage of any grants that either Dr. Cog, because Dr. Cog will have some grants as well.
Yeah, specifically for updating those. That's what I was remembering. I just can remember the numbers.
So
Yeah, I don't remember how much I have.
would that mean if we get the local planning grant, it would be and the Dr. Cog, it would be on the order of 10K rather than 75K as far as the
It
towns?
could be, that would be great if we can be successful in one of these grants.
I'm just saying if we get 80%, and that's an
Yeah.
if, that would take it down to 15 if we get another grant. All right.
Right, and then the other question mark in my mind is water. We've got a tough topic, council's still got to wrestle with long-term. We know that Chimney Hollow has got uranium in it, gonna prevent us from getting water for 6 years, I think was the latest. And then we don't know what's gonna happen with NISP and the cost and what's gonna happen to our community with that. So we've put restrictions on the number of homes we can build. I think we're at 180 units per year at this point. Is that correct?
We have 180 single-family equivalents that we would offer up to developers this year. The developers can bring their own water, and they are. So they are coming with their own water, and that's in addition to the 180 that we've set aside of our own. So it really depends on, who is bringing water, and that just adds to the potential growth. Forgetting the other part of your question though.
No, that was it, but I do have a follow-up. So we allocated 0 units to affordable housing based upon staff's recommendation. I'm just trying to get the timing question done, right?
Yeah.
If we're committing to this now, but we've got this bigger macro challenge for the town, does it make sense to just pause a bit until we figure out the water? And I think we're gonna have a debate on council, right, on whether we stay in NISP, because the big payment's coming, we have to decide that this year, 6 million, if I remember right, more. Which will commit the town to a lot going forward. Or if we don't commit to that, then we got a bigger problem in the sense, well, we got a different problem. We have no water, but we have no payment. So those are big questions, right? They're this macro thing sitting over these other decisions we have. So I think that's more of just a discussion.
So I guess the
point on
question
whether
is, will we be penalized if we're not actually building units?
No, we will not be penalized. That would just mean that if we don't hit our commitment in the 3-year timeframe, we just can't recommit to the next 3-year phase. What we'd come back to you with in a couple of months would hopefully be something realistic that we anticipate being able to meet. We're not gonna come in with a number that we're gonna tell you we have no idea how it would be met. There are 1 or 2 opportunities that could occur in the next 3 years for affordable housing. And that would help us argue with DOLA what the real possibilities and real commitment ought to be. And so with that, just as a reminder for the water allocation process, we'll be coming back to you in December to set the number for 2027. And at that time, if we've already committed to DOLA for Prop 123, and we'll also talk to the owners of the land that we think may or may not develop in 2027 or within this 3-year timeframe. I doubt they'll be ready to pull permits next year. So honestly, I don't think we'd come to you with a number for affordable housing units out of our allocations until maybe 2028 at earliest. So and we can certainly answer any questions you have regarding the water availability in December. And we'll also be able to come back to you in a couple of months with that better number for the water allocation, so you don't have to feel like you're not sure about the commitment.
Yeah, so Longmont ran into the situation, where we got the 15 from was they based it on the amount of affordable housing you already had. There was a percentage of that. Longmont was not able, they had a huge number of affordable housing, as is Boulder. Longmont in particular was not able to hit their commitment for the 3 years. And so what happened is, for the next year, they're not eligible for the funding.
I think Aurora was going through a battle because they also didn't make their number. They were trying to petition DOLA and the state to actually reduce or make some legislative changes because they had, 400 some odd units, but still that wasn't even enough, so.
Yeah.
Hypothetically with water, we do have the allocation for town projects as well as residential development, so if there is something that pops up that council just deems as worthy enough for the allocation, or if we're under where we anticipated to be, we could tap into those.
We do, let's see, this year we set aside about 10 or 10% of our water allocations for public projects. Those public projects are associated pretty closely with the capital project needs that we have, so like the Erie Community Center and the police building. So when we come to you for each annual allocation, there will be an anticipated expenditure of those. We do have a 10% contingency. And we also have within staff's purview the ability to move some things around by 10 acre feet into each different category. We can also come back to you to set the number differently at any point in the year. So if we do have a project that comes in, we'll be able to, hopefully.
Public projects have 12 acre feet.
Yes, thank you.
Say that again, Kelly.
Public projects have 12 acre feet for this year from May on.
Okay.
So that would facilitate the Cheeseman property, what we've had this year in terms of what is actually sold approximately.
So, yeah, 35, well, that was a mix of single family and townhome, so that probably is, let's just call it 22 acre feet, just based on how we, well, not acre feet, single family equivalents. Yeah, so the project, it would, a project that would come in, I mean, if it was using the like low income housing tax credits and was pulled together and truly affordable, it's probably gonna be around 50 units. And those take a while, and so we would know right now if somebody were able to and interested in getting a project together, even for 2027. even if they start the work on it in 2027, they wouldn't realistically pull building permits until 2028.
This would, I'm speculating here, help me if I'm off base, but this would probably be something like a Habitat for Humanity that comes in and develops for this specific reason.
Yes, and we also have Brothers Redevelopment, which owns about 6 acres in the Old Town area, and they have what's the name? I'm spacing the name of the 12-unit senior.
Something Smith.
Yeah.
Big
Big Smith.
Big
Smith.
Smith.
I feel like we just did a trivia. So the Big Smith project, that is adjacent to the 6 acres that they own. And over the years, they've been interested in building out the rest of their site, but it's really about what they're able to take on. They're a small development outfit, and they only do a couple projects a year.
Not related to Toll Brothers.
No,
No.
a lot of
Thought maybe
brothers,
it
a lot of
was
brothers
their-
out there.
Charity arm or something.
So if a developer wants to utilize the fast track process, how do they benefit? Is there a certain percentage of their project that the state funds can go towards?
So if you look at the bottom 3 bullets, typically they would, if they had a project already pieced together, they would go for the debt and gap financing.
Okay.
And they would be able to use that as part of their financing package. If they're using low-income housing tax credits, which a lot of them do, that tends to only have 2 timeframes in the year. And it's like February and August is when they have their competitions for those. So it's pretty predictable, I would say.
They also would get the advantages of the fast track.
If 50%, correct?
Yes, especially if they're already zoned.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So just to confirm, those are all the DOLA, not the CHAFA, so the 40%, that's the DOLA side right there that we're looking at.
It's just Prop 123 funding.
The 15 units that met our commitments. From my understanding, the AMI, we have 80 to 120%. They don't look at anything over 100%, is that correct?
At this point, yes, they are defining it as 100%. I think most of our,
Majority of our units fall at 100 or below that have sold to date.
You're talking about the Cheeseman property?
Correct.
yeah, I think we're at 27.
27 sold as of this Friday. We have a closing on Friday, so it'll put us at 27. Of that 27, I believe, without looking, I believe the number's 21 units. I can double check.
That are 100% AMI or less, households of 100% or less.
I saw statistics saying it was, you got, communications put it out, it was like 81% AMI or something like that.
Is the average.
Is the average.
So if we have 5 of the 27 units that are over, have we been receiving applicants that have been under the 80% that we had initially looked at?
Yes. I think the lowest is 37.
Lowest is 34.
Have they received any of the CHAFA funding that's available to them as well?
Not that applicant, no. What we have seen is just conventional loans with gift funds from relatives. A lot of these are younger adults settling in, and settlement funds from divorces or other legal entities. So there has been a couple entities that have gotten other deposit funds through other organizations. So not necessarily CHAFA, but other nonprofit organizations.
What does, I know 300 is what the state is currently saying for us, part of their algorithm. We have currently 15. What does reasonable look like in your eyes?
I mean, I'd want to back this up with actual data, but I think anywhere from 30 to 50 units over the next 3 years would be reasonable. And
Would we be able to count the excess over 15 from Cheeseman or no?
We would only be able to count those if, for some chance, we still have units that are unsold. And this next cycle year, if they were to sell, we would be able to count that overage.
Thank you.
So if they sold in 2027.
Yes, correct.
Is it building permit though? And that's a little bit different for
They do.
rental versus owner.
For homeowner, they do building permit confirmation, but then look at actual closing dates. So we would need to
Okay.
confirm that with DOLA, but following what they've presented, we could count any excess units not sold this year towards the next cycle, but I would want to confirm that with them to double check.
And hopefully we wouldn't have any spilling over to 27, so.
Yeah, we're at 80 to 120%. That's what we were trying to hit with Cheeseman. DOLA wants us under 100% or under for the commitment. When we look at those applications, were they between 80 to 120%? Were they just under 100%? Or were they even further less than 80%? As in, if we make a commitment and we're looking to 80 to 120%, do we have high odds of receiving one of these grants? Or is it that it's gonna be towards a low-end AMI?
So we would want to set ourselves up for success with any of these projects or programs. So if it is a developer, we would ask them to do 60% for rental and 100% for ownership. So that matches what these funds, these program funds are geared toward. So that's what we've been looking at.
Yeah, no, the mayor had mentioned Habitat. As you know, I'm president of the board of Habitat St. Vrain. We usually go 30 to 60%. And so far, knock on wood, we've had 0 foreclosures in 38 years. So,
And I will say some of the programs the state did evaluate this year and agree upon, at least on the rental side of things, of increasing that AMI percentage level, because they were seeing higher rates of, I believe 80% AMI. So there's discussions of increasing their allowances from, I believe 60 to 80 for rental. At this point in time, they've not evaluated for ownership increases, but they anticipate that on the way.
So we'll be watching that carefully.
So the upside, if we move forward with this, is we could potentially tap into these funds to help get something off the ground and working. The downside is if we tap into this and we don't hit our commitment, then we're out of the game for a bit, a year. It's not the whole 3 year.
However long it takes us to build them. So if it takes us, if we commit to 50 and the projects don't get off the ground for another 4 years, it's a reality, that could happen. Then we would just wait until those building permits are pulled and then reapply for the next round.
Got it. And then what percentage was cut from these funds going forward? You mentioned that obviously the state budget is in not the best shape.
It was roughly 40% of the 300 million that was cut with the passage of the state bill.
130 million over 3 years.
Over 3 years, 50 million the first year and 40 million subsequently following the next 2.
All right, so we're reading 108 million up here, will drop down to 50 million in the first year.
So I think they had 20.
Yeah, it's a combination of all 3 of those was what was allocated this past cycle.
So in reality, I mean, it's supposed to be 300 million a year, they're pulling 50, they'll actually have more than this past cycle. So it'll be about 250 million.
Okay. Pulled 50, not allocated 50. Yeah, okay.
And just to confirm, that's all the commitment side. But when it comes to 50% affordable housing, we have to have a Prop 123 compliant if they come in with 50% or more affordable housing, we have to have that process in place per state law.
So not per state law, if we commit to Prop 123, we would need to have that process in place. And as I mentioned in the, up here, there's it's not all of our major applications. So, I mean, honestly, we aim to go quickly with these types of applications that you see on the left, and yeah, so it's only if we commit to Prop 123 at this point. State's not obligating us.
And is it 90 days for each of the ones that it applies to, right? For each of those applications, 90 days for each. Now, I look at that and then I look at the side that does not apply. And those processes seem like the longer of the processes, right? So the commitment is for processes that are typically shorter already. Okay, so I guess it helps a little bit, but it doesn't really help in the longer.
Yeah, I mean, if you have to rezone, it's gonna take a while. They probably heard a lot from municipalities, and this is what their guidance came from.
Okay, so this is more recent than the original Prop 123, right? So
Yes.
And whether or not it actually shortens the process isn't really our concern. I mean, this makes it easier for us to comply.
right.
I know Kelly had told us about the idea of how to become compliant and then a potential resolution for council saying, you know, we are compliant because of this. What exactly did staff figure out how we can be compliant with that 90-day period? What do we have to do differently internally? And then site plans and SRUs typically go together. Is that 90 days still for the two of them? Does that put pressure on staff? How would you all be able to facilitate that as well?
So your reference to special, just for everybody else, special use permit, we often do run those contiguously with site plans. So one of them would have to, we would probably have the site plan be the 90-day timeframe. We could split it out if we felt like we couldn't meet the timeframe, but it's.
There's a lot of exceptions to, like if the applicant doesn't provide all the necessary reports or whatever, it gets extended. And basically the way it would functionally work is if we know it's an affordable housing project, they would do multiple rounds of pre-applications, and those do not count to the 90 days. So it would be a very front end heavy to vet all of the issues and everything, and then they would apply with like a perfect application. No revisions necessary, or maybe one round of revisions, and then it would proceed through any other processes if there were public hearings and whatnot.
So does that include the referrals on the front end?
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
And we'd really only have time for one round.
Yeah.
And, some of these projects, as we have learned with a lot of our infill projects, they are so complicated because you're trying to shoehorn into existing smaller streets, and you have tighter setbacks and things like that. So we would have to flesh a lot of that out in the pre-app process.
One of the challenges with the original ordinance 17/2023 was that public comment was pulled out of part of it to make it fast. And then I think in your role, Sarah, you could sign off for approval. How does what you're recommending with the policy change that? Or
So since that was eliminated or pulled out of the code, we don't have an administrative review unless it qualifies currently for administrative review. So if a site plan is less than 20,000 square feet, that could be administratively reviewed. But in general, it would have to at least go through planning commission. And all of our other applications require a public meeting.
other questions, comments on this particular topic?
Wanted to
Checking with
clarify.
Commissioner Hemphill.
Yeah.
So MJ, I remember talking with MJ about this when we first were talking about it and adopted it originally, and she was saying parts of this are real clunky and make it hard for staff in particular to comply. So do you feel like these requirements are doable on the whole?
So for reference, MJ was our former affordable housing manager. And at the time before she left, DOLA had not come out with their guidance. And so we were all very skeptical of how we were going to get, because we were concerned that these longer zoning application types were going to be subject to the 90 days, and we were just a little incredulous over how that would happen. So we were, pleased to see that we can honestly meet these with just a resolution.
Commissioner Hempel, Ben, you out there? Do you have any questions?
No, at this time, thank you.
Okay.
So just a question about your last bullet point on the housing needs assessment and the action plan. Is it an option to use outside consultants? And the reason I ask is that the city and county of Denver has a Unlocking Housing initiative, Unlocking Housing Choices initiative. They're working with a consultant to have some robust community engagement as well as reform of zoning and development code. I'm just wondering if that's on the table, especially if there's potential funding for a planning grant.
Yes, that is our plan, to tap into the consulting role for updating that. We don't have staff capacity for that, or expertise at this point.
Thank you.
Okay, we'll look forward to hearing back on what DOLA says and what you think is reasonable. And will that come back to council? Are you thinking another joint session? What?
So at this point, we don't have it yet on the council's agenda, but we were anticipating it just coming back to council. We don't have right now, for planning commission, we would envision having more of a conversation around the housing needs assessment and the housing action plan. So that would be part of our work plan for next year.
All right, and I think as soon as the information's available, it'd be good not only to share it with council, but share it with the planning commission, just in case there's something in there that, any commissioner may have input on. There's ample time for them to chime in.
Yes, yeah, we can do that.
Thank you. Okay, I think we can move on to the next topic.
All right, hand it over to Josh.
So wanted to come to you all today to provide you with an update on where we are with the comprehensive plan amendments. And I do want to preface that a lot of what you will hear today or tonight very closely here in the coming weeks as we bring this forward for amendment proposal. Where this started was back in, looking at the wrong screen, back in January 6th of this year, there was a discussion with town council that ended with the ask for staff to evaluate our existing residential medium category, which was designated and as adopted currently as 8 to 18 units per acre. The discussion that was had at that night was to evaluate what it would look like to divide that existing residential medium into two new classifications, or I should say one new classification or revision to the existing. The discussion was the creation of a new residential medium low at 8 to 12, which we want to acknowledge is in close proximity to what the 2015-2005 plan had, which was 6 to 12. The proposal that we'll be bringing forth is aligning this with 8 to 12, as if we did 6 to 12, lots of 12s here, it would have overlapped with our currently adopted residential medium. Residential low, sorry. With that change, that would require us to adjust our existing residential medium classification as well. And so our suggestion is to adjust that to 12 to 18. And I'll show you where this exists in the coming slides. Also in that discussion that happened that night was the evaluation of enhancing some of the policies in our community building blocks chapter. Where this existed was aligning more urban development as it existed next to rural residential or rural characteristics, and how can we provide more context-sensitive design elements to not only help planning commission, council, but also staff as projects came forward with more higher intensity developments abutting rural residential or rural characteristics. So I will be bringing that forward as well to Planning Commission here shortly. But wanted to show you where this new residential medium-low classification were to exist. With the discussion of the creation of this new classification, the priority focus area was the 111th and Arapahoe parcels that you can see on the southwest corner of this map. However, with this discussion also came about the request of evaluating any other underutilized or undeveloped parcels that were previously designated as that residential medium. So staff did take a step back and acknowledge there were some other parcels that through further research we acknowledged would be better classified as this residential medium low classification as well. Specifically, there was one other group of parcels which you can see towards the middle of your screen, which was about 4.5 acres southwest of Old Town. So if you consider the intersection of High and Anderson, parallel to Linear Park, there's about 4.5 acres that are undeveloped there. Through further analysis, we determined that that would be better aligned with that 8 to 12 characteristics as well as with the current zoning designation of that area. So that will be a proposal we'll take forth. However, there was one other area that we looked at, and this stems back to lots of other conversations that took place. Specifically, there was direction given on the May 12th council meeting to evaluate the former Paul Page discussed as Village of Coal Creek property. Initially, staff was anticipating evaluating that as the residential medium-low classification as well. However, guidance from that May 12th discussion of exploring that as parks, open space, and protected lands was determined. So what we are proposing is matching the future land use map with that designation as well. So adjusting that parcel or grouping of parcels to the parks, open space, and protected lands classification with this amendment. With this, we also wanted to be cognizant of all the work and outreach that went into creation of the comprehensive plan. We wanted to make sure these changes weren't necessarily thrown at the community without any awareness and education. So we made a point of taking this back out to the community at various different events just to make them aware of what we were evaluating and reviewing. In that time period, we also asked our PAC, our Plan Advisory Committee, which was made up of advisory members of the different boards, to review these proposals, provide comments. We also asked our TAC, Technical Advisory Committee, which is made up of representatives of all the different staff or departments here at the town, to review these proposed amendments. We did not hear any concerns or feedback initially or from either one of those committees, but we also made a point of contacting these property owners specifically that we were proposing adjusting their land use classification for. Obviously had a mix of emotions with that. We did see some concerns from residents as well as some property owners that this change would fall out of alignment with the goals of wanting to see more diversified and dense housing, more affordability options. But we also heard some feedback that they're okay with limiting the concept or the potential for there to be apartments, but still allowing attached townhome products and other things of the like of that nature. So overall, I would say a majority of the feedback that we heard was kind of brushed over. Most people were just appreciative of being aware of it. There was a handful of individuals and property owners that were concerned with these proposed changes, and then a handful that were also in support. So relatively overall, our feedback from the community and our stakeholder groups I would say it was of a neutral cause with a few different feedback moments. So thinking ahead, what does this mean? We do anticipate bringing this to Planning Commission on August 19th for a recommendation to Town Council approving this amendment. Following that, we'll be bringing it to Town Council on September 8th for our final discussion and hopeful adoption. At that point in time, and Daryl will cover this a little bit more on his coming slides, we'll be in a position to, as required or as mentioned in the comprehensive plan, come back to Planning Commission and Town Council with annual updates on implementation status and overall various updates on what is going on with the comprehensive plan implementation. So that was a very quick run through. I wanted to give the space back to you all to have any further discussion or questions. And again, acknowledging that we'll bring this back in with more detail in the coming weeks.
All right, just a clarification, the packet, it says August 5th for the planning commission, just want to make sure the due
Yep.
date is.
Yeah, we had a mishap on our end, and we needed to push back the meeting to make sure we met our 15-day noticing requirements, so.
Questions, comments?
How does this affect parcels that already have an application?
So up until this point, even when we know we have amendments coming, we review all applications based on what is currently adopted. So at this point in time, we are still reviewing everything based off the comprehensive plan as approved. What we have been able to do, if there are any affected parcels, at least notify them that we are in an evaluation stage of amendments and the proposed changes could come about. The thing to acknowledge is land use is still a visionary phase and really the zoning is the regulatory impact. We do ask for alignment with our comp plan, so that is one of the criteria elements. But up until any amendments are approved and adopted, we'll continue to review off of the 2024 plan as is.
I don't think we have anything with an
Yeah, I was gonna say, we don't have
application.
any.
Maybe a
We had a pre-app, but
Yep.
no
No,
QJ applications, yeah.
All right,
Obviously, this is more than just the map itself, there's also the document itself. Is there anything already thought of in terms of how this would differ, or if it would differ, this new zoning class in this, as in terms of primary use, location, secondary uses, FAR, anything like that?
Yeah, so what would primarily be affected, wrong screen. What would primarily be affected is our description. The secondary use would stay consistent. What you'll see, and I do apologize, it's not well laid out here, but will be laid out in the coming presentations, is a difference of what that description is. With the residential medium low, that would remove, I believe it's the Garden Court Apartments housing typology from the residential medium as is. So we would still see attached and detached housing types such as townhomes, but everything else, floor area ratio, secondary use would remain consistent, and location as well.
And then residential medium would stay the same as it is right now?
Yes.
Commissioner Hempel, anything from you?
Just a question, Josh, if you could expand on the public about, or the public interaction about the concern with the lack of housing. I'm thinking of the Page property and rezoning that to open space.
Yeah, I can speak on that. I think it wasn't necessarily parcel specific, I would say, at least with these adjustments or these amendments. But there was some overall concerns that us reducing the density range as well as changing the description and housing typology that we could see within this reduces the possibility of seeing a wider range of housing coming to the town. If you look at our housing stock right now, we're primarily large lot, single family homes. But whether it was aging demographics or young couples, there's the discussion of wanting to continue to be here into the future and what that looks like. And the reduction of density was a space in which they saw that option dwindling or lessening, I should say. So there was concern that reducing the housing density or creation of this new housing land use would not allow them to have that opportunity continuously into the future.
Thank you.
All right, if there's no more questions, we'll move on to our next topic.
And I will pass it to
Okay.
Daryl so we can do
The
mouse
time
pass.
We have to pass.
I only got
I
two
will
slides,
get
you
up
could have kept it,
and
that's okay. Yeah.
How's that? Daryl?
Thank you.
Daryl, if you want to take just a quick minute to introduce where you're coming from, just like real quick, your experience that you're bringing.
Yeah, sure. So, Daryl, planning manager, nice to meet all of you. Good to be here. We just moved back to Colorado from Columbus, Ohio, a couple months ago. I'm a previous Colorado resident. I actually worked in Johnstown as the senior planner, so just up the highway from you. So I'm familiar with a lot of the challenges that you all face, although Johnstown's a little bit behind the development curve in terms of where you all are at. I'm well versed in all the challenges we get to deal with and the cool things we get to do. Previous to this, I was in the public or the private sector for about 3 years, working as the planning manager for a large engineering and planning firm. So very good to be here. Yeah.
Well, welcome.
Thank you. So we'll talk about a couple different things here. We'll talk about the UDC or Unified Development Code update, short-term rental or STR licensing, and then the open space rezoning project, which I'll probably pass off to someone else on the team because they have a bit more information on that than I do. So we'll start with the UDC or Unified Development Code update. I know that's been talked about for the last year or two, getting a consultant on board, getting an RFP out there to really start to update the Unified Development Code. So that's something we're internally working on now. Oh, that's right. I'm looking at my computer and not that. That's funny. I'm going the wrong way. I'm going the wrong way. There we go. I think it's the same thing you did too. It's funny. So we're now moving this along finally with some additional capacity that the staff finally has. So internally, we're talking about getting the RFP put together. We've got it drafted. We're taking some final comments from different departments to ensure that everything has been addressed within the RFP. Once it happens, we'll get it to purchasing and get it out on the street and hopefully get a good consultant on board. We hope that occurs if timelines fall into place correctly. We can get it out on the street in the next month or so, give folks a couple of weeks to respond to proposals, go through those proposals, potentially have interviews if we need to. You're looking at probably a October start date, I would guess, if I'm being hopeful. And then as we know, code updates tend to take a long time. Those can take anywhere from 12 to 18 months, depending. And I say 12 months under the best of circumstances, where everything runs completely smooth and everything is sunshine and roses, and engagement goes fantastic and everybody's really happy. We know that doesn't always happen, so we're going to plan for most likely 15 to 18 months is a really good time frame for getting that through, getting it before Town Planning Commission and Town Council for Town Council to then adopt a Unified Development Code. As part of the Unified Development Code, part of the development, we want to make sure we do plenty of public engagement. We would put that on the consultant to do the engagement, working with our communications team and our planning team to make sure that we're reaching all the different communities within town, including Old Town, all the different HOAs, going to community events, speaking to people, speaking to business groups, just making sure we talk to everybody who this Unified Development Code is going to affect, which is probably every resident and business owner and employee in the town. So making sure we work closely together, tying in folks from town council, from planning commission, from the different boards, from the community itself to make sure that as we put together a steering committee, that we're taking into account all the different needs and desires of the community in general, both staff, elected, appointed, residents, and business owners. Any questions on the UDC update before I move on to short-term rentals?
I'll just add that we will also be including the development and building community in that, so it'll be a lot of different folks.
Yes.
I have a question on the UDC
Do you
update.
anticipate putting into the RFP scope?
So we want to keep it open in terms of the RFP. We want these consultants to come to us with some unique approaches to public engagement. Understanding there's some things we need to see. We need to see an open house. We need to see some pop-up events. We need to see them speaking to different business groups. But in reality, we don't want to box them into a point where they have to propose something that's very simple. We want them to come to us with some really neat ideas, something maybe we haven't thought about.
When I was with the Boulder Planning Office, one of the real challenges was not getting the same people to attend these events every time and trying to really reach those voices that aren't heard. It'd be nice to get some innovative ideas.
Yeah, and a great way to do that, like pop-up events are a great idea. You know, showing up to soccer games on a Saturday morning, getting in touch with families, going out to the community center, any different events we have in town. Just show up with a poster board and a table and a tent, just start talking to people is the best way to reach folks who are not going to show up to town hall, who are not going to show up to your typical events, right? Because we know that people are very busy nowadays. They've got things going on, multiple jobs, kids, family life. They don't want to show up to a typical open house or an event. They're not going to come. You're going to get those same 30 or 40 people, which is fine. We want to hear from those people. We want to hear from everybody else too. We had a question online.
Yeah, I heard Ben.
Ben, do you have a question?
Anything?
Yeah, the question about the UDC, this is effectively the big update that will incorporate all of the comprehensive plan changes into code. Is that correct?
Yes, that's the idea, is that we have all these great policy recommendations from the comprehensive plan. We want to implement those any way we can into the UDC to make sure we can carry out the comp plan.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So another effort that I thought was underway this year, and it may still be, was impact fees and review of that. Is that still in 26 or is that,
Yeah, that's being led by finance department.
okay.
Yeah.
They are coming to present to council in August. Not so much the results, but kind of an understanding of what an impact fee study will look like.
Okay. Do you think it'll be completed this calendar year, or do you think it will be,
Don't know the time frame. I don't wanna guess. I think it's this year, but I will find that out.
okay, because it feels like we're getting kind of compacted and I don't want to rush anything important. And I don't want to rush it.
And it's Tischler Bice is doing the impact fee. They've done much of the region, so they come in with a lot of knowledge, so it won't take them long to come up to speed to our community.
Okay. All right, any other questions on code and regulations? All right, let's go on to strategic planning.
Actually, Mayor, we'll do short-term rentals as well
Oh,
here.
I missed it, sorry.
It's all right.
Yeah.
So the other kind of elephant in the room is STRs, or short-term rentals. I'm sure we're all aware of that little festival that's coming to town, and the impacts and great things it brings to the region. Having lived in Salt Lake for 2 years before, I'm familiar with Sundance and all of the great things it brings and all of the traffic and the people it brings too. So that stuff bleeds into other communities. That didn't stay in Park City. It made its way down into the valley, into Salt Lake City as well. So it's going to make its way up here over the years, whether it's just short-term rentals, whether it's other stuff, you're going to feel the impact here. So the one big thing you'll see immediately is short-term rentals, because in Boulder County in general, I think that there's a lack of lodging. So short-term rentals are a great way to provide that, and they're a great way for folks to be able to make some extra money on the side and offer out their extra space, their home, for folks who want to come enjoy Sundance. And that stuff can extend outside of Sundance too. We know that short-term rentals are operating here in Erie. They're operating all throughout the country. We currently do not technically allow short-term rentals, but we don't also go out there and enforce on any rules. So we know they operate, we kind of just let them go, let them alone. Now we want to create, with Sundance being the impetus, to create some really good regulations that fairly regulate them, but also allow folks to be able to use them and enjoy them, and allow folks to come in here and visit Erie and visit the region. So I'm uniquely positioned to deal with short-term rentals. I built a short-term rental program in Sandy, Utah when I was there working as a planner. My graduate study and doctoral research, which I didn't complete, was in short-term rentals, and I've done other short-term rental programs. So I know more about short-term rentals than I would ever hope to know, which means I can help us build some really great regulations that make a lot of sense. So we had our internal kickoff actually today to start working towards new regulations, how those are gonna look. What we did is we looked at the existing conditions on the ground in terms of what our partner communities are doing within the region. Looking at, our immediate neighbors who are very similar, the Lewisvilles and the Lafayettes, also looking at Boulder and Longmont, looking at some communities maybe outside of the region that are like us, like your Golden, for example, or even going up as far as Fort Collins, even though they're a little bigger, they have a big tourism base as well. So understanding what their regulations look like and how we can implement those or take some best practices from them and build our regulatory frameworks. Part of that was also looking at our short-term rentals here in the town of Erie and what they look like in terms of the types of units. Are folks renting their home or their property all year as a short-term rental, or it's just a short-term rental property and not really a residence anymore? Are folks renting out their ADUs, whether attached or detached? Are they sharing their home? Are there multiple ADUs on the property? We found a couple of those in our research as well. So understanding the conditions on the ground and Sundance coming and what other people are doing is going to help us build regulations that actually make sense. Because we want regulations that are going to be enforceable, regulations that are easily navigable, regulations that are complied with voluntarily. So making them fair to everybody. Part of this is the theme tonight is going to be public engagement, public outreach, talking to short-term rental operators to see what they want to see, to understand how potential regulations are going to affect them. Because what we don't want to do is regulate folks out of the short-term rental market unfairly. So we want to get them into account as well. Talking to folks in Old Town, that's going to be really important. So Old Town, as you all know, is one of 2 neighborhoods in town that does not have an HOA or a controlling board. So there's not a whole lot of rules down here as it relates to different land uses. We know that HOAs typically will have more stringent regulations than town code. Oftentimes, I found that they actually do not permit things like short-term rentals within the HOAs. So you see a lot more here in Old Town. So speaking with Old Town residents and how any regulations would affect them and how short-term rentals are impacting their daily life, it's going to be really important. Understanding, hey, are there noise issues you're finding with these? Are there parking issues? Are there trash issues? These are things that move beyond the traditional land use and, hey, someone's got a short-term rental, but in reality, yes, that might affect their property value or the cost of housing, but we want to understand the effects of short-term rentals on the ground so we can create regulations that make sense. And then speaking with business owners as well, because oftentimes they have a huge benefit and a huge stake in tourism and short-term rentals. So speaking with those folks as well as part of our overall engagement plan. That is moving on now. We'll be meeting with communications here either this week or next week to start putting together the finalized engagement plan and start doing the outreach so we can bring something to you all here in the next couple of months.
All right, questions? All right, let's go to open space rezoning.
I do have a question. Sorry.
Yep, go ahead.
Thank you. Small town feel is a big item that comes up in our comprehensive plan. How do you expect to word this regulation so we don't lose that with all of Old Town being short-term rentals instead of people who actually live in Old Town and give us that small town feel?
I think that's the huge challenge, Ben, and you hit the nail on the head. We want to look at how many there are down here in Old Town, and there's a lot, but it's not a critical mass where you're just seeing out-of-state plates and people zooming in and out all the time. But if you walk Old Town, like most of us do at lunchtime, for example, you start to notice the properties that are in transition all the time. You start to see those out-of-state plates coming and going and different people. So it's noticeable even to those of us who don't live in Old Town. What I would say is you want to look at things like regulations that would control, again, that critical mass of short-term rentals. Do we look at geographic limits? Do we get limits on the types of short-term rentals? Is there a limit on the number of permits for whole house short-term rentals all year, for example? Do we allow short-term rentals just during Sundance or during events that some communities do that? Superior, for example, does it where council will pass a resolution for recognizing certain events throughout the year, and those are the times when folks can pull their special event short-term rental licenses. So those things can run concurrently with one another. So there's a lot of different ways we look at addressing that. I don't want to commit to one particular method of doing it at this moment, but there are a lot of ways of doing it.
And you also mentioned that there are currently short-term rentals happening in Erie that they aren't enforced. What would enforcement look like for short-term rental?
That would depend on how we write the regulations. Any enforcement you do would want to avoid being heavy-handed, because again, we want that voluntary compliance from folks to be able to buy into the program, to understand why we're regulating them, and not just think that it's the town coming in and forcing them to pay a license fee and be registered and be tracked, right? That's never the goal. The goal is always to make sure that there aren't unfair and disparate impacts on the surrounding community, to their neighbors, to their friends, to the folks who live in the neighborhood. So ensuring that anything we write is fair is gonna be important, and taking I guess the word is a soft approach to enforcement is gonna be key.
Great, thank you.
All right, go ahead.
I can't assume. Are we looking at a potential permitting process that would be staff facilitated, where somebody would apply if they wanted to do a short-term rental, potential fee requiring of an ordinance from council to pass as part of the various fees we offer?
Absolutely, yes.
Okay. And I know that we have, you were saying the HOAs, they acted, as a quasi-jurisdictional entity. If we allow it within all the municipality, are they forced to allow it, or are they able to opt out or have, policies or, bylaws that say they are, prohibited so?
We would not supersede their internal CCNRs or conditions, covenants, and restrictions. So they would still be allowed to essentially not permit them. One way to not get around, that's the wrong word, but one way to address that in terms of us taking on some liability for, say, allowing a short-term rental in an HOA that doesn't allow it, is what I've done in the past with other communities is have an affidavit, for example, that says the individual who owns this property swears that the HOA allows short-term rentals, and they sign it and they give it to us, and that's good enough for us. And then anything that happens thereafter, if they're found that short-term rentals are not allowed in that HOA, that's between that HOA and that property owner, not us.
Okay, but ADUs are used by right now, which can include short-term rentals, and HOAs can't prohibit an ADU from having a short-term rental. So is that just a carve-outs of state law, that it's a statewide concern now, and even if they prohibit, or if we prohibit, we still have to allow?
We don't have to allow short-term rentals in ADUs.
Yeah.
We have to
It's
allow
just the
ADUs, we
ADU.
don't have to allow short-term rentals in them. In fact, many communities in the region do not allow short-term rentals in ADUs.
That makes sense.
I'll also add the lodging tax that
Yep.
we're planning to put on the ballot in November would impact the short-term rentals as well. And those would be, the taxes on those would have to be collected by staff, because our sales tax is collected through the state, so we'd have to have a process through finance that we're working on that as well.
To kind of piggyback off that, and I hate that phrase, but to piggyback off that, right? Airbnb and VRBO will collect lodging taxes. So it'd be something that finance have to work through with Airbnb to collect those. My understanding at the moment is that those platforms remit them directly to the communities. But we talked about that today in our kickoff meeting, that finance is going to talk to surrounding communities and see exactly how that's operating, because it may be a burden, but it may not be as big as we think it is. It may be. We just unfortunately don't know. But it may be a little easier if they're renting out through those platforms. And to speak to Commissioner Hemphill's concern, this kind of made me think about it. As we look at lodging taxes, for example, you've seen communities take that lodging tax and leverage that into like community beautification in downtown areas, for example, as a way to leverage that funding towards the communities that's most impacted. So those are things that could be explored through just the overall framework of short-term rentals in general.
Yeah, just to be clear, I think the revenue we were anticipating was pretty low.
It's pretty nominal.
Yeah, at least initially. I imagine over time it could grow.
I think we're thinking $100,000 maybe the first year.
And just for expectation purposes, so the UDC amendment would come to us because of Title 10, but then fines and enforcements would be also coming to council, not us, because we recently moved it to Title 1. I'm gonna turn to, right?
Yeah, Title 10 goes to you all. Any other municipal code changes, it's just council.
All right, let's go on to open space.
Would you like me to carry?
You can yes. I'll drive for you though if you need me to move.
Okay.
No, I think you're
No,
just staying here.
you're good.
Okay.
So this is, I guess, a relatively new project. Will be a joint effort between Parks and Planning and Development. We're kind of, you could say the Page property is a pilot project that we're kicking off this year to rezone it. We have 2 open space categories in our zoning code right now. And we have a lot of open space in town. Some of it is zoned PD, some of it is zoned the ag, open space. So, on the face, it seems very simple to, just rezone everything to the, reserved open space, but it's, a lot more complicated. We have leases on some of the properties for agricultural uses, and the reserved open space district does not allow those. So that will probably, I would guess that project is gonna take us longer than 1 year to complete, just because of the amount of properties that we have and the differing conditions on the ground. But yeah, all of those rezonings will come to both of these bodies, so you'll be seeing all of those.
Could we do it in chunks?
Yeah.
So we don't have to wait,
Yes.
2 years, but maybe look at the most critical properties that
Yes.
there would be general agreement on.
And reserved open space is, like you say, restricted to just parks and trails and a special review for a parking lot, right? Or,
Yeah.
and that's it, you couldn't lease, you can't lease the, you can't have ag or anything on that property other than park and trails.
Correct.
Unless it's rezoned, correct? Like it doesn't lock it into perpetuity for open space. The rezoning doesn't necessarily, right?
Well, if it's reserved open space.
Then it is locked in.
It would have to go to a vote,
Change
of the
zone.
people to change it.
Just for council's edification, this is OSTAB's baby. We all recognize that. We are going to have a joint study session with OSTAB on October 21st after the Page property rezoning. So we can talk about all these nuances because there are so many nuances. Once you all started talking about them, OSTAB started talking about it, we started talking about it. So just to start helping scope some things for staff because it's pretty extensive. Very extensive. All the land dedications, conveyances, through all the developments, it's been substantial.
Yes.
So is that joint session, is that planned through OSTAP? I'm just making sure we're following the rules here.
Yeah, so there isn't an application obviously out there. So this is just a study session where we can talk about the UDC, the properties, just so that they have another, sounding board as well as we can provide our comments to them. They will go back and they will make the recommendation with parks and everything like that. So we understand it is them, so we don't get into issues of, they're providing a recommendation or there's an active application in there. So this is pre-application, if you will. So
I would caution exploring any specific properties too.
Correct.
Yeah.
Yes.
Just,
Yeah.
we don't wanna have any
Agreed.
appearance of prejudgment.
Agreed.
And also, just so council knows, on Tuesday's meeting, you're gonna see a resolution asking for approval from the council for staff to make that application.
Yes, for the Page property.
Before we move on, I will say Brina was investigating things over here, and the impact fee study is supposed to be done by the end of the year.
Okay. It's one I would like to get done. It's gonna be controversial for our developers and it's been underway.
Yes. and
Not that I wanna do it, but I think it's the right thing to do.
we did hear, we had our quarterly meeting with the HBA, the Home Builders Association, on Monday. And they are definitely interested in this impact fee study. And so we do have a quarterly meeting with them, in the September, October timeframe. So we'll see if we can marry the groups up and have some conversation.
Okay. All right, strategic planning?
Actually, on the open space, I do think it's important that this is being done because the residents approved a charter that I think many think that open space properties had to go to a vote to be disposed of or rezoned, so I think it's important we look at it. The reserved open space, does that really kind of limits the use on some of these properties? Should there be another one in there, like recreational open space for actually, I know I'm not supposed to throw out a property, but like the single track or, where you can do changes on it, but it's still.
I don't know that it would meet the intent of the charter. That's the issue.
Okay,
We have to update.
We're exploring that with legal.
okay.
You mean like a reserved open space that had much more flexibility than the
Similar.
current?
Yeah, it's an open,
Reserve.
yeah.
Yeah, that's, I was thinking of the same thing, that there should be another, one that's protected, but you can do much more.
Well,
You
we
have
do
much more
have that. We
flexibility.
have Ag OS,
Yes.
and it does
Right,
allow.
but that's not,
And there is like
That-
other programs like conservation easements, you know, the town of Erie could put a conservation easement on a property and
Yes.
specify on that specific property what you can do, and that's, you know, a widely utilized thing in all towns. So I think there are other options if, you know, it doesn't work out legally with.
right, but per the charter, like, Councilmember O'Connor said, a lot of folks think that, their open spaces already require a vote, right? But the only one that would is very restrictive.
An expansion of that could possibly not meet the intent of the charter, is what I was saying. That like if we have the Ag OS, it may not meet the intent of the charter, so then it wouldn't be as protective.
So what in the charter are you referring to?
I'm sorry?
What in the charter are you referring to that it wouldn't comply to?
I'll tag in Elliot.
I'm gonna pause this for a moment because I think this is a great topic, but probably not for this study
Yeah.
session. And when you have a chance to look at it and bring it back to us for understanding. The other thing is there's been other items that I think staff would like to see updated in the charter. If we need to change the
Sure.
charter, then I think we should all be open to at least hear that conversation. If we need to get like a third
2027.
designation. Yeah, not 2026.
And as both commissioners said, counselor said, there's space that's not open space per se, but hasn't been built upon, and residents think it's open space.
Yeah.
Oh, yes.
And maybe should be open space. Purely,
Could be,
it's kind of like those trails that get done because you walk that
yeah,
path.
social trails,
Social
social trails we
yeah.
call them. OSTAD's been looking for buying property since before I was on it, so.
All right, open space. All right, I think we're done. We'll move on to the strategic planning.
Josh, you put so much hard work into this, and you're the expert. I would prefer to give you the spotlight here to talk about things you put a lot of work into.
Sure.
If you'd like.
So I guess comprehensive plan, obviously we just covered that. Again, the anticipation is to provide those amendments, first to planning commission, August 8th or August 19th, and bringing back to, town council on September 8th. Yes, September 8th. And, again, per what is mentioned in the comprehensive plan, there is an expectation that we would come back to planning commission and town council at minimum once a year to provide status updates, implementation. This could also include discussion of whether or not we need to start considering an update to the plan as is now. So that would be a general annual report we want to give. Obviously, we'd want to speak with you all, and if there's any suggestions or things that you would like to have in greater detail, we can come prepared with that as well as it relates to comprehensive plan implementation. Not going to harp on that one too long because we did just cover it, but if there's any questions on that, otherwise I can move on to the next one if you want me to cover that too, Daryl.
Yeah, this is your baby, man.
All right. So Old Town Visioning, this is a build off of what some of you may recall. This was the Old Town Social Capital exercise that we kicked off in late summer, early fall of last year, and we concluded in the winter of 25. A lot of that was to gauge what the existing social capital within the historic Old Town neighborhood was. This was done because our anticipation was to do a neighborhood plan kicking off that last year. However, we took a step back and realized we as staff didn't feel like we had those connections, that rapport built up with the community to be able to go out and create a plan with them. And I want to put emphasis with them. This plan is not to be done by staff, but to be coordinated by the desires of the residents that are here. And to be able to do that effectively, we needed to have that rapport built up. So we wanted to take a step back. We did that social capital exercise to start building some of those connections, building a list of contacts, folks, individuals that are willing to dive into some of these deeper conversations that we anticipate having. Before even going into doing a neighborhood plan, we proposed some quick term, medium term, and long term actionable items back in, I think it was at the January 6th discussion of this year as well. What are some things that we could start showing some implementation in Old Town, showing some cohesiveness, again, that social capital. One of the things that emerged very heavily for us was that there was a lack of true understanding of what their identity was. There was the acknowledgement that there's two historic Old Towns. There's the Old Town Commercial on Briggs, and then there's the Old Town Residential that surrounds it. And they don't necessarily operate or exist cohesively. And so with understanding that, our lack of better words, our vision of what we want to start kicking off this fall is doing an historic Old Town visioning exercise, where we're going back out to the community, doing more of these pop-ups, doing these conversations, doing these walks, understanding what's the identity connection issues, where's some potential branding opportunity, what does the community ideally just want to see for the future for Old Town. I will preface that the outcome of that work is typically the early stages of a neighborhood plan, so this could really help us inform what these next action items are, the scope of work, all while we're still continuing to build that rapport with those Old Town residents, and giving back that attention that we heard that they felt they were losing as the community continued to grow. So while this is one actionable item, obviously we have a lot of other works, short-term rentals, other projects that are going on, UDC updates, that we would coordinate these efforts to make sure we're having a robust community engagement piece, as that's very critical to make sure that the outcome, the product, is truly representative of what the community desires are. I was really long-winded, but if any questions on that?
Are you getting good engagement, broad engagement, or is it a core set of individuals, or?
I will say we haven't restarted this next phase of engagement, but if we're talking about the social capital exercise that we did at the end of last year, at first it was fairly consistent of clusters of blocks of residents that started coming out. We recognized that they already had that social capital built. They knew their neighbors, but they didn't know the neighbors one block over. So what we started noticing when we hosted the coffee shop or the coffee hours, the ice cream social, the neighborhood walks, is that group began to grow, and they started connecting with other pockets of social capital, people doing neighborhood dinners. They were doing get-togethers on the weekends, neighborhood walks. Through that, we started seeing more people broadly coming out. So I would say at the beginning, it was fairly clustered. But as more people warmed up to the idea of, hey, we're just here to talk. We're not coming with a survey. We're not coming with a project in mind. We just want to talk to you. We started seeing a lot more community gathering in spaces like that, a lot more trust. So we want to build upon that, continue to grow it, and hopefully continue to see more robust interaction.
You know, a fun part of that was getting to hear all the different stories from people who've lived here literally their whole life, like for 80 years. Have you collected those stories in a I don't know, document, or is there a plan to do that?
We don't have a storytelling piece, at least from the initial conversations. One of the quick, or well, it depends on how scalable we want to be. One of the quick, medium, or long-term actionable items would be, drawing a blank on the technical term of it, but it would be basically a storytelling collection piece where we'd be able to capture those stories and use that as the framing of maybe how Erie is, or at least historic Old Town is now, projections for the future. I know I've done this at a former place of work where we partnered with the library and they did an archive of the stories. And it was able to be a piece for telling the story of why that neighborhood framed as it is. So that's something that we could evaluate, especially with visioning. Stories is what really frames a lot of that. So that's something that we could build into that scope.
That was not my idea. That was your idea. I want to take credit.
I would just add, in some of our work, I don't know if you use an Esri GIS platform, but there's a storyboard function that you can put in a website to make all of these more accessible and transparent.
Yeah, that's something we'll definitely be exploring. I mean, the intent is, we want to also have not necessarily a landing page, but at least a place where Old Town residents can collectively go and find updates, which is an opportunity to have that storyboard. As Daryl mentioned, Old Town is unique. They do not have an HOA. They don't even have a voluntary neighborhood association. They don't have a collective voice, and this could be an opportunity to start framing that and allow them to have it, so that they could come together as an entity that can put requests out to the town.
We heard a lot about that during Hopewell.
Yeah.
All right, housing action plan?
Yeah, as we've mentioned a couple times, this is a requirement by the state that we have to have in place by the end of '27. We do not currently have a housing action plan. We have our housing needs assessment. However, these two plans assessments and the plan would work cohesively together. So our intent is, one, to explore what grant opportunities we do have available to help assist in either furthering a scope of work or funds that we've requested for the upcoming budget, and working with a consultant to get that plan in place. In addition to that, we would be looking at doing some updated numbers, as Sarah mentioned, to our housing needs assessment as those were pulled in '22. What is also critical for us is these numbers would help inform, at least the numbers as we know now would help us inform the level of commitment that we want to pursue with the Prop 123 number of units.
What are some of the key elements of the action plan?
I would want to go back and double check. The state does require key elements that we meet. I'm not remembering them off the top of my head. But
We could come back with them.
yeah, I would want to come back with you because
Look at it now.
Is there like a framework online?
Yes. There's a template that they have a template that suggests, it's sitting on my desk right now. But they do have some key elements that are required to be able to meet that expectation.
Thanks. Okay, ADUs?
All right, well, I also went a little bit on Kelly for this one, but I do know we were an accessory dwelling unit or ADU qualified jurisdiction that we were noticed on earlier this year, I believe.
Yeah, so there's some funding available from DOLA for being a supportive jurisdiction. We got that designation because we don't charge impact fees and we don't make people get a separate tap unless they decide they want one or they need one for upsizing. So there's some grants available. We're exploring different ways that we could utilize those grants in developing an ADU program to help people pursue those.
Yeah, the state has some financing programs, and they also encourage communities to have regulations or kind of standard ADU designs.
Yeah, some toolkits or plan ready.
Yeah, I'm ready. So my mother-in-law lives in an ADU in my brother-in-law's backyard in different municipality. It was a pre-planned one. So they basically took it from the municipality, built it. It's beautiful. It's actually 2-bedroom, 2-bath, and she's doing great there. So I've seen it work, and I'm hopeful we'll see more of that here.
I see it in my travels, as I've mentioned before. Quite often, so I mean, and what I'm seeing is that it oftentimes is a widow who has a big house, walkout basement, and the basement might already have been finished, or they'll finish it, but in the end, it's still not legal because of fire codes and I'm sure other codes involved. And so I'd like to see some sort of program like this, come forward in Erie, because it's already happening and it's helping people stay in their homes. And actually one unit in particular, the owner did a nice little job doing up the basement, and the person living there at the time when I was there at the house, worked for the school district and the food service, and couldn't possibly be making 60% AMI, I wouldn't think. And they're able to live in our community. So if the program is already there through the state and it's already happening, let's make it legal.
Right, and connect folks to financing that could help them build out their basements.
Yeah, and not make it really expensive for the homeowner because they're trying to earn extra money, not spend a whole bunch of money to, their ROI.
Our building codes make it a little hard right now, but,
So the regional working group through Boulder County was talking about ADUs. Is there any money through the county for ADUs?
We could look into that, yeah.
I don't recall hearing anything recently in those discussions, but we meet with them here shortly again, and we can bring that back up.
And I mean, something else that might be good is, so there's already multi-generational homes out there. And maybe some sort of guide, or how can a homeowner know how to legally make this, make that other unit a legal ADU without, why make them, if basically this house is the same as this house, there should be something there that would allow them to know, not have to reinvent the wheel every time someone comes forward and wants to make that unit an ADU.
yeah, we usually see folks wanting to make them legal if they're trying to sell a home, but usually don't. We'll often have a basement remodel, if it's in their basement, and it's not usually called out that they specifically want an ADU, so, but they often, as you discovered, it can be used as a separate source of income. So yeah, we'd love to get people legally in line, and I think that's something that we can explore, just helping people understand how to get those closer.
And I guess a third or another point is what I'm also seeing are people who are digging out their window wells and making an entrance into a basement that isn't a walkout. And so that's probably gonna happen more often. It happened down the street from me, and it's family members living there. But you don't notice it.
I seriously want to do that to my own house, so yeah.
Is that illegal in our code to do that?
It's not two separate, though they're all within the same family.
Right.
And so
It's not technically separate.
they're not separating the two units.
So you can do it, it's just if you make it an ADU or a separate unit, that's the problem.
Yeah.
Not making the
Not
entrance.
actually
No.
There are building code changes that differentiate between the Ohana, I only know the Hawaii term for it, the Ohana unit, the family unit versus the ADU. So it's sometimes it's just separation of mechanical, usually, and sometimes it's insulation and changes like that, which can be costly.
Sure.
We'll come to you, Councilmember O'Connor. Yeah.
All right, anything else on the ADU?
I know we talked on Prop 123 and the commitments and whatnot, we were talking about the DOLA side, but there is a CHAFA program that is specific for ADUs and building them, repurposing them for, to have inhabitants. So that would be one thing that I'd like to see the town to start providing more resources on, so that if individuals are looking for financing mechanisms, CHAFA has it not just for the affordable housing side, but also for all these other programs that they have, and that's the other 40% of the allocation for all the affordable housing through Prop 123 and whatnot.
Yeah, most definitely. We would want to take advantage of that. So, and that may be, you know, what we really look at is just having somebody help us identify some key action items for us based on the programs that are available. Anyway, we're excited about it.
I guess one other part though is making sure that it's just one ADU on the property, not necessarily two or more.
Apartment complex.
Yeah, well, you're turning
Some of our
what.
houses are the size of that.
My brother bought his house in Pittsburgh that was broke up into 3 units.
Mhm.
And he put it all back to 1 unit, but that possibility is there, so you know, we may want to say, since it originally was a single family home surrounded by other single family homes, that you limit it to 1.
Someday, you know, as our demographics change so significantly over the next 25 years, what are we doing with 4,000 square foot homes and single person households?
I just want a unit for my teenager. He can be by himself and do his dishes.
So you don't have to see the dishes.
That's all I'm looking for.
Well, you'll have to talk to Lafayette. All right, let's move on to planning commission roles and responsibilities.
Yes, and we have about less than 30 minutes
Yeah.
to do that.
Sorry.
Go fast.
The baton is going over to Kelly, our deputy director.
There. So, planning commission roles and responsibilities. I think you all are aware, municipalities are enabled by state statute to create planning commissions. It's also in our charter. And then Title III kind of defines the makeup of planning commission and then refers to the UDC for their duties and responsibilities as it exists currently. I apologize, this is kind of small. It is a shortened table from the UDC that shows those responsibilities. The D means decision maker and the R is recommendation. You'll see council there on the first column, and you all have the majority of the decision-making responsibility. Planning commission makes recommendation on zoning, special review uses, preliminary plats, any amendments to the UDC, and the comprehensive plan. And then, as Sarah said before, site plans that are over 25,000 square feet in building, or those that she decides need to be referred to the commission. The planning commission is the final decision maker on those. Board of Adjustment and Appeals is the other QJ board. Their scope is very, very narrow. They're just appeals of administrative decisions and then variances, and they are the decision makers on those. Planning Commission has had a couple of discussions. This only captures one of them because of packet deadlines and whatnot. Planning Commission discussed, how we compare to some other municipalities, potential for expansion of those decision-making abilities for Planning Commission. How to balance, being efficient and then also ensuring, the public is heard. Joint study sessions with other advisory boards. As Chair Salish mentioned, there's one planned for with OSTAB in October. And then they also discussed some having staff come present on other strategic plans or review of strategic plans, including capital improvement plans and infrastructure planning. And then I'll just add on the 15th, you all honed in on kind of 3 items to discuss with you all was the ability for sitting members to review and provide recommendation to the council for any vacancies on the commission. The authority to recommend changes to the comprehensive plan. And the authority to recommend changes to the UDC. And I'll just kind of plug here as you're discussing this, if you would, kind of keep in mind the 2027 work plan and our budget constraints, as well as staff capacity, not just planning and development, but other departments. How efficient we are, the effects of the market. We've seen a lot of slowing this year in particular, so we're not seeing a lot of land use cases. And then, making comparisons to communities of a similar size. Because if you look at, much larger municipalities, they have a lot more staff, they have a lot more budget to take on more. And then, any long-term impacts that those shifts might have for you all.
Yep.
So I will open it up.
So I always go back to what problem are we trying to solve? If we make changes, I'm not against changes, but I want to know what the value is versus the cost and all of that. So I don't know if we take these one at a time. So let me just ask the question, right? If you go back to the July 1st summary, I guess this is when the Planning Commission discussed all the possibilities there. Comparison to other municipalities, that was a comparison of roles and responsibilities?
So it was specifically looking at what other municipalities did, what they were doing in terms of their assistance to council, taking things off of their plate, or other roles that they might have compared to what we have.
Got it. But we haven't done that work yet. This is just a topic.
No, this is not a new topic. Councilmember Hoback will remember we did this back in 2020, 2021, way back when. Again, got pushed to 2022. It's been on every single report to council since 2021, I think. So it's been how can the roles and responsibilities adapt, and we did look in 2021 at what other communities were doing. So that was something that we had previous information on.
So I'm asking it through the lens of, do we have that as a council to say, oh, look at Lafayette, they've got a whole thing where the Planning Commission looks at ADUs to ensure that teenage sons can get whatever they need. Or do we not have that? Because I think it would help inform us if we saw that Erie was doing something different than the other municipalities around us.
Yeah, that's definitely something that we could do. Should I say, can't speak for the body, but I assume that's something that we can do. We can come up with these. So it's also part of that work plan that we want to develop, because we don't have a work plan. And a quarter to half of all of our meetings since 2023 have been canceled. So we've been volunteering our time, but have been underutilized because there just are a lack of applications coming through.
Which is a reflection of what's happening in the housing market, I'm assuming.
And it's pretty typical. I did a comparison of 5 different communities, and Erie actually meets about 70% of the time. A lot of other communities meet between 50 and 65%.
Okay. Okay, so at least for me, it would be nice to know if there was something that we should be doing with the Planning Commission that we're not, and we're just ill-informed about that, as opposed to just putting more with you, Planning Commission, that then creates more work for staff if it's not adding the overall value. And I don't know where that line is, but I don't want to just jump into new roles and
And the
responsibilities.
starting presumption should not be just because somebody else is doing it, we should be doing it.
True, right. We may be more efficient, we may be less efficient, depending on what that is.
And being a home rule municipality, that is the whole idea. We do what is best for us. So just because another community is doing it, doesn't mean we should be. It should be something that we see that there's a need for, council sees there is a direction to us saying this is definitely a whole, this is definitely something that could help us. It shouldn't just be because somebody else is doing it, we should do it. I know I've been talking to Elliot about certain things to in preparation of this, but question is, can we even, if we identify an issue within the UDC, can we even make a recommendation to council saying and staff saying, hey, we see this hole, we recommend investing some time out in the future about this. We don't know if we can because it's not explicitly provided within our code. Same thing with the comprehensive plan. We know that ultimate authority is vested in the council for adoption. Can we even provide a recommendation of a amendment to or implementation of? We don't know if we can because it's not explicitly stated that we can or can't.
Yeah, and I totally get that. So I think one thing that's missing for me on this roles and responsibility chart is that it's very binary, either decision maker or, let me bring it back up here. Where did you go? There we go. Recommend or decide. I'm used to using RACI charts, RACI, which gives you a little more information. It's responsibility, accountability, consulted, or informed. And I don't know, maybe that's, if you see something in the UDC, you, the Collective Planning Commission, I think you should be able to say, hey, this is causing problems with us being able to approve or understand. Is there any restriction on that happening today?
I mean, that's up
Okay,
to,
so-
looking over at Elliot to see.
Yeah, I would say, my advice to the planning commission has been, this has been their, I guess take a step back. Planning commission is created by ordinance, so their roles and responsibilities are set forth in the charter and the code. So right now, they primarily sit in a quasi judicial capacity on land use applications and make decisions on a record before them and are applying the criteria on a particular application. I've recommended that if they want that authority to, outside of a quasi judicial hearing, to make recommendations to town council, that we should seek an amendment to the code to specifically designate the authority to the planning commission, that town council wants that input, wants that feedback, and is soliciting or asking the planning commission to make recommendations to UDC changes or other things within their purview.
Right, and I see value in that in the sense that you are all going through a very similar process that we have to. And if you're seeing things, then to be, prevented from actually informing somebody that can do something, it's like we're purposely making bureaucracy. And, my world is about efficiencies. But we'd have to change code for that particular one.
That would be my recommendation, yes.
In the umbrella of the UDC update and the comp plan updates, that is where we would have a lot of integration with the planning commission. So during those update processes, essentially, the planning commission is making a recommendation to council, but not initiating, that process of doing an update. I would say, just as a thought, if those recommendations are coming outside of an update, I think that would certainly just have to be, that could be passed on from planning commission to council. Obviously, you would need to likely update the code for this, but then council would have to determine, how does that fit into the work plan? Do we just add that to the next code or comp plan update, or is it enough where we think it needs to have its own work plan effort? So wanted to couch that as there are, there is a clear process and opportunity for a good amount of change, but.
So if right now Paul called Dan and said, hey, we were doing this thing last night on the planning commission and this part of the code is really messed up. I think it should be updated. Is that in violation of our ordinance?
No, but I think if the planning commission were going to have a public meeting to discuss the code and adopt a resolution or adopt a process, ask staff or develop a staff report or a planning commission report requesting a change, that's just not within the authority of the planning commission currently.
So it's informal versus formal. Yeah, and I don't know that I'm stuck on the formal. I just want you to be free, all of you on the planning commission. If you see something, say something, right? Get it into the hands of one of us or staff to say this really needs to go on the list for the next update. I've got a charter, potential changes to the charter, just people have spoken to me. I know Meredith has one from staff. We haven't sat down and said, hey, here's a kind of a pool of changes that we should consider. But at some point that will likely happen. And I think the same kind of approach could be looked at with the UDC, that somebody's keeping an informal list.
Oh, we have a list.
It's almost a book.
We have a very large.
All right.
I do think there would need to be some like a scaffolding around how that could happen. We probably would have to create that in code so that, because it could come across as intimidation, as you need to update this code. Like, I'm approaching you and I'm telling you what to do. So we would need to line that out like anything else, I think. What I'm seeing on this slide is potential expansion of planning commission decision-making authority. And that has come up a number of times over the years, and ultimately been decided we won't go that route over and over and over again because of elected representation versus appointed representation. So
Totally. This is why that formal, informal, I'm okay with the informal. If Paul comes to you and says, hey, we ran into this problem. Somehow, I think as a council member, you should have a way to say, hey, can we get this on a list somewhere? Not that we're adopting it, not that Paul is saying you have to do this. I mean, if you're saying that, you probably shouldn't be doing that.
Well, I mean, realistically, ultimately, it's going to go back to the staff.
That's
for
right.
evaluation, so.
Yeah, the thing I would have, think from my perspective, I'd appreciate something clear on is there is the rule that no one at this table, I guess, other than me at this point can direct staff.
That's right.
So, you don't want to have, you don't want a staff person to think an offhand comment from a planning commissioner was direction. So some kind of formulation that everyone's clear as to what the role is.
Could we create a form that we all can use? And that form just loads a spreadsheet that then eventually gets back to the consideration of staff? Hey, I'm a planning commission member and, last night I was, concerned about this part of our code. Here's my thoughts, right? You can have prompts in there.
Gabby loves a form.
Should be forms too, because then we all have to live within the bounds of the forum. But even council members could use it too. Right?
Yeah, I was gonna say, add UDC as an option and you resubmit.
There's Erie Submit to do that. So
You could do
I've
something
never used it that way.
specific to
So
get to the right
internal
person.
versus
Yeah,
external.
exactly, yeah.
I mean,
I think that makes sense.
part of this is, the question is, can we even invest our time into discussing these things? Because this isn't just our time, it's also staff time that would be there to meet, instead of a cancel meeting, to meet, to talk about these things.
Yeah, I would say that crosses the line. So I see it more as this caused us a problem. You guys are not gonna talk it all the way through to say this is the solution.
Correct.
But this is a suggestion, so maybe we look into a form and see if we can't make that work legally. And then you don't feel like you have this constraint on you to get information to who needs to have it.
So you're
Sarah
saying
and Kelly
individual,
and I
I'm
can
sorry.
work on, Sarah and Kelly and I can work on something.
And hopefully, with the code update and the way that we ran the comp plan, we had a lot of workshops with the planning commission throughout the process. I'm hoping that we can still workshop things with the planning commission as we go through the code update. So that we can, use their expertise and their experience applying the code to make a better recommendation to council. So hopefully that's still in line with.
Just so you know, as you're talking, lightning is
I know,
like
it's
lighting the
like-
sky behind you.
I think it's the sky behind you.
Yeah.
All right, so
That
we-
might be a sign we're not supposed to talk.
I did like the idea of a workshop where we could have, quarterly, throw things at the wall with staff and see what sticks, something like that. That way we do have a feedback mechanism where we can, bring these things. Obviously, it's staff's time that is most important, and then council's work plan, that would, be secondary to that, so.
Yeah, are you thinking like at one of your meetings quarterly, or are you thinking, because
Well,
quarterly's a lot.
I think that's
Yeah.
different than what Sarah was saying. With the UDC update, we will be taking, a lot of sections of code and various aspects to you all to dive deep into as a part of your recommendation to council. So that, I think there's a
Yeah, that's.
There's a
difference.
function already in
Yeah,
place.
in the process, you'll probably be annoyed with us by the end of the UDC update, so be prepared. But, you know, we want to be able to workshop that with you during that time. The hope is there's not a need for as many, you know, after we get this beautiful code that will address everything. Hopefully we won't have to hit it too often after or while we're implementing it, so.
Yeah, I wouldn't wanna commit to quarterly only because that's 4 more nights, 4 more meetings for staff a year, so.
I would say try to do it within the balance of the current meeting structure. And then if that doesn't work, then, you know, you have to schedule additional meetings to get through the UDC.
Yeah.
I also don't want to take 2 years to get through the UDC. If you can lock yourselves into a room for an all-day, you know, session, right, where you're strategically going through things.
As long as it's publicly noticed.
Yeah, publicly noticed.
We
So,
can do
yeah.
study sessions too, right?
I believe so, yes.
Okay.
So the other thing that came out of it was asking you all if there was something that you saw as an opportunity for us to help you or to help the community. Because we have to date talked about, you know, what can we do, but obviously, how can we help?
Yeah, you know, in all honesty, I think I've been so busy. I think many council members have been so busy with these bigger macro things we're dealing with. You know, whether it's water, oil and gas, you know, the Page property took a lot of time, right? So nothing comes to mind where it's like, oh my God, I wish we had more help here. It's more about just time to get through these complex issues. But that's my view. If anybody else on the council has a different view.
I would be interested to see that comparison
Of
of duties with,
other municipalities.
yeah, just because we may not want to do any of it, but it would be,
We don't know what we don't know.
we don't know.
And the converse is true also. Just because someone else does it doesn't mean we should. And just because someone else doesn't do it doesn't mean we shouldn't.
That's right.
Agreed.
But I think what I'm hearing tonight is nothing is, you know, popping out to say, hey, we really would like the planning commission to do X, but we're open to the conversation.
I mean, we did talk about some of the infill properties, Sierra and whatnot, and Muller, properties, you know, that we need more understanding of how to utilize those properties better, or so that when they come to council, they're more vetted out, or there's less conversation.
So is that triggered by the developer or the landowner? Or is it triggered by us? Yeah, right,
That's
I'm
gonna
getting
be,
the legal,
it's gonna be developer.
yeah.
And I'll say infill standards is a big gap that we have in code right now. We know that, and that is on the very long list at a high priority to address with the UDC update, yeah.
And so the risk there is we start dictating something on a piece of land and that's not our,
Right.
yeah, okay. Okay.
So I want to play my new commissioner card and ask a question. What do people think about that last bullet? Because from my perspective, those are documents that probably already exist and wouldn't have to be developed with more staff time. But it certainly would be of interest to me as a new commissioner to really understand kind of the bigger picture of what's in planning as far as capital improvements and infrastructure and those sorts of things. Is that something that we would have access to?
Yes, you could have access to it. I think there is a little concern from the staff side regarding having another body reviewing and in some way in the approval process for the capital improvement plan. That's usually a process that's held with council and all the priorities that are dictated through the budget process. So we have a pretty tight timeline. I'm putting my other Sarah, knocking the H off. And so
Sarah.
I know we have a pretty tight timeline for budget. And since we do it annually, I think it would be hard for just kind of bring in the planning commission process too. or into that process. So, however, I think it's important for, if planning commissioners want to know, particularly as we go through a comp plan update, maybe we could do a better job of helping the planning commission through that update process know what's really happening with infrastructure and do a deeper dive at that time, because I know that was a concern for planning commission during the comp plan process.
I will say that the CIP plan, this is complicated for the public as well, in that we do a 5-year plan. We're really only approving year 1. And then,
It's a rolling plan.
yeah, next year comes around and people say, well, this was on the plan and I'm expecting it. Well, we had budget changes and now we have some changes we have to do. Or it could be simply a plan development that was coming in, now has been delayed, and this one's coming in, so we're changing all our infrastructure over to this thing. So it's a moving target for a lot of things, and adding more steps along the way in the, like Sarah said, a very short time frame would be probably very difficult, particularly for public works and parks.
Perhaps this round we need to talk about, should we move to a 2-year budget cycle? Because then planning becomes different, the updates and staff time becomes different. And I'm not advocating for one way or the other, but it's a conversation that CML probably has information on that.
My experience on the biennial budget plan is that the second year is supposed to be really light and easy, and the one thing that changes the most is the CIP. At least that was my experience in the previous municipality.
Is Louisville on a 2-year? What does Lafayette do? Do we know?
I don't know. I think they're on an annual. You always
Okay.
think that second year is gonna be easy, and it's
It turns out not to be, so you revisit it anyway.
a huge portion of it.
Okay, so with your permission, would you mind if we work with staff to figure out how a feedback loop could work? If we have suggestions,
So I'm thinking we go back to this form so that we all play within the realm and letting staff make a cut of that. I mean, it could be even UDC, check that box, charter, check that box, comp plan, check
It could be
that
the whole
box.
municipal code.
Yeah.
Because Brina needs more work.
Don't say that.
But let's let them make one pass at that and then we'll see where it goes from there. That's okay.
So the question becomes in my mind, do it as individuals rather than as the planning commission.
That's right, because if you guys start discussing it for decision, then what I'm hearing is all of a sudden what we have in ordinance starts to be in question. And I really don't want us to get in legal debates about that. Even though Brina wants more work, I simply don't want to get in.
I was captain of the debate team in both high school and college, so that is my natural habitat, so I enjoy debates. We call it going pro, you're over here.
Within the context of work.
All right, other discussions, topics with regard to what the roles and responsibilities are?
Mayor, if you don't mind, I would like to thank Sarah and her staff. They
Yeah.
put a lot of work into this. And they've had a challenging year with less than a full plate of staff members down there. So I
Yeah.
appreciate all the work they put in.
Yeah, this has been great. I think every topic there was good information for us to discuss, so appreciate it all. And congratulations on your promotion and congratulations on being hired.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, with that, is it 8:07 PM and I adjourn this meeting.
Thank you.